we are ready to start with some questions and answers. Thank you for being prolific in your question writing. We've brought some up and we'll bring some more up, and the ushers are still collecting, so if you've not yet written your question, you will still have an opportunity, and the ushers are still at it, and we'll get some more brought up through the ushers in an orderly way back to Jody Mackey right here. Hey, Jody.
Hello, Congressman. It's really nice how you've spoken to our hearts in this community. Thank you.
Good to be here. Thank you.
What is your exit strategy for ending the U.S. war and occupation in Afghanistan?
Just go. Quickly. Was I supposed to deliver a paper?
Is there more we should know? Because we're hoping for that.
Well, you know, just let me add a quick postscript. In Iraq, they tell us we're leaving, but we're leaving. We have 50,000 troops still there, and you can't be in and out at the same time. Excuse me. Second, with respect to Afghanistan, we're accelerating the war there. We're at the point in Afghanistan where we were in Iraq in 2007. They've slid the exit date from 2011 to 2014. Oh yeah, I mean, you know, and I've talked to some people who say, you know, maybe 10 years, maybe more. Yeah. So look, that's why I say just go now, and we have to put pressure on. This is part of our presence here, and part of the work that all of you do is going to. We need to build a very powerful peace coalition to be out on the streets on this. We need to let people know we're not going to let our government continue to hijack our dreams with wars that are ad infinitum. So, go. That's what I say. Now.
Thank you. How would you change the U.S. economy to become a peace economy that serves people instead of damaging or killing them?
Well, you know, it's been said a long time ago, they shall beat their swords into plowshares, spears into pruning hooks. The same defense contractors who right now are making various materiel for war, we can retool those factories, and we can make, you know, transportation. We can make energy efficient components. There's a lot that can be done. This idea of a wartime economy, it just doesn't make sense. And if you're borrowing money to prosecute the wars, it makes even less sense. And so our economy needs help in a number of different ways. Number one, we absolutely must repeal these trade agreements that have let jobs just go out of the country without even a second thought. Let me tell you what's wrong with them. No workers' rights, no human rights, no environmental equality principles. That's what's wrong with our trade agreement. And I marched in Seattle in '99 with the Teamsters and the Turtles on this exact issue. So we have to have fair trade. It's got to be fair, and it's not fair if it doesn't have rules. We have to also, we need to expect that we should have a full employment economy, that everyone who wants to work, there should be a place for them in our economy. Wall Street functions on a notion that a certain amount of unemployment is necessary to the proper functioning of the economy. Yeah, right. Tell that. Those are the economists who say that they have jobs, right? But the fact of the matter is that people need jobs. People need work. And we're losing our work because of these trade agreements, and we're also losing it because we're not investing enough in America. I told you how the wars cause investment to be crowded out. So we're doing everything wrong in that regard with respect to the economy. So stop the wars, start investing in the economy, rebuild our basic industries, steel, automotive, aerospace, and shipping. Start to invest in education for all, every person, healthcare for all. These are the kind of things that will enable us to have our economy rebuilt. But the way we're going right now, we're just digging ourselves deeper and deeper into a hole. You have to change it. And we really need transformative change on this economy as well. Okay.
Yes, you've had a Ford plant in your district, and your big conversation with them is how to make better cars that Americans really want to buy, cars that are fuel efficient and good for this world.
The workers aren't the ones who set the efficiency standards, as we understand. Those are set by their corporate bosses in Detroit, and you know, sooner or later, and it's happening a little bit more, not fast enough. They're beginning to make cars that are more fuel efficient, but not as fuel efficient as some of us would like it. I mean, I believe we ought to be buying American, but I also believe that we ought to demand that the products that are made here are, and particularly with respect to cars, are as fuel efficient as possible, and people will buy those cars. So I'm all for that.
If your district in Ohio is eliminated, would you consider moving to Washington? We are getting a new district.
Well, let me explain what's happening in Ohio. Ohio has lost a lot of population. Because of these trade agreements, we've lost steel mills and auto plants and aerospace plants. And because of the subprime meltdown, tens of thousands of people lost their homes. And so we're losing 2 congressional seats, and the story is in Columbus, where the Republicans are doing the redistricting, is that my district is going to either be substantially altered or it's going to be dismantled. That's what I'm looking at. So people ask me, they say, you know, I've already announced that I intend to run again for Congress. I just don't know where my district's going to be yet. But your suggestion about coming to Olympia is intriguing. So. You never know.
How do we get Bush and Cheney to The Hague?
Well, I think it would be KLM out of New York. It is absolutely certain that neither the Congress nor the administration has any desire to take this issue up. It's too bad, because that's where it ought to begin. But it may well be that some other state will do that. This issue, by the way, isn't going to go away. It is not going to go away. I mean, I'm sure not going to stop talking about it. You know, it's true. Look, we've got some huge problems in America, but let's not forget there isn't anything bigger than going to war against a people for whom, you know, a case was fabricated to go to war against them. That is a high crime. There's no question about it. So we have to keep insisting that our government officials demand justice. But beyond that, we have to be ready that some other state is going to just say, you know, they're going to make an indictment. I'm sure it'll happen. But I still say, why wouldn't we be the ones who would take up that challenge? We cannot permit this grave injustice that's been done to the people in Iraq. And for that matter, look, this war in Afghanistan, just yesterday, at least 65 people were fired upon by NATO forces, and they were killed, and people were saying, well, they got rid of a few insurgents too. You know, this thing about collateral damage. We have to watch, this administration, the Obama administration, should be on notice about their conduct of the war in Afghanistan. So this isn't about Democrat or Republican, my friend. So, you know, it's something that we should never forget, and we need to demand accountability. And we need to do it in our forums here and abroad.
Thank you. The war machine is very profitable for the rich and powerful. How do we counteract this until they evolve too?
Well, you know, the same thing about swords into plowshares. There's a lot, you know, unfortunately, there are a lot of people in America who have jobs that are involved making material that's used for war. You know, when Elizabeth and I were visiting the Middle East 4 years ago, we saw cluster bombs that were in residential areas in South Lebanon. And they had written on them, California. You know, they were made in America, okay? A number of the shells that were dropped by the Israeli army on people in Lebanon were, you know, came from the United States. We need to, we don't want to put people out of work, but we need to retool factories to make things other than weapons. And you know, and let's face it, and Stiglitz talks about this in his book, that when you make these bombs, I mean, they're really, that a war machine is not a good investment. Actually, it's not labor intensive. At one time it may have been, but it's not anymore. It's capital intensive. So you don't really create a lot of jobs, but you spend a lot of money. And it's destructive in the end because the damage it does to the people who are attacked and the damage it does to the people who do the attacking. So we really need to develop this thinking that says that we should turn our swords into plowshares. That's a movement. There's a movement there. And we have to look at these defense industries and say, look, we can take it in a different direction. The problem is the extent to which the Pentagon has an extraordinary hold on our policy. Their budget keeps growing no matter what. They're crowding out other needs in our economy right now. And they become a force unto themselves within the government. Now, this is what General Eisenhower warned about when he gave his valedictory as president. He said, beware of the military-industrial complex. And there are people who thought when they first heard it, boy, this sounds conspiratorial. Well, Eisenhower knew what he was talking about because people who worked with him went into the industry. And you know, there are things that we can do to develop our economy, but if our economy becomes increasingly reliant on creating agencies of death, we're all in trouble. This is, you know, we're consuming ourselves. So this is about, we want to survive. That's the way we survive, is to stop waging war. And we want to stop waging war, we're going to stop having to make these instruments of war. And if we're going to stop making the instruments of war, then the people who are doing that right now have to have other kinds of work. We should be able to do that. We have enormous, marvelous technological capabilities to do that. It's called technology for peace, and it's time.
How do we get rid of the Citizens United ruling?
Well, the Supreme Court is very congenial to corporations, as we know. And I think it was 1899, was that Santa Clara County case, where they ruled that corporations are people. Corporations are people. Okay. That case set the stage for Buckley versus Vallejo, free speech equated with money, gave corporations an edge, and then Citizens United, which basically let corporations contribute directly through running ads for or against candidates. We really do need a constitutional amendment that would say public financing only. Only. If you have public financing, you have public ownership of the political process. If you have private financing, you have private ownership of the political process. And what we have right now in Washington, with all due respect to all my colleagues who I love and respect, and they're all good people, we have a bad system which inevitably policy is sold to the highest bidders, and inevitably it ends up like an auction, where policy is just auctioned off. We've got to change that. We've got to reclaim our government, and we've got to reclaim it by having public financing.
I told them if they didn't bring me enough questions, I'd have you tell your love story with Elizabeth, but they brought me enough questions. I do want to see the U.S. end our military engagement in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as at many military bases around the world, but I am horrified by the treatment of women in Afghanistan at the hands of the Taliban, as well as traditional culture. What can the U.S. do to support the women of Afghanistan?
Well, when you're talking about the rights of women and children, and women in this case more specifically, this becomes a matter of the international community. Let's face it, who's getting killed by most of these bombs? Yeah, exactly. So this idea that somehow we're involved in some charitable undertaking and waging war against the very people we're trying to save sounds too much like Vietnam's. We're bombing the villages in order to save the villages. I don't buy that. Now, what do? This is a matter for the international community. And as a matter of fact, all security ought to be the involvement of the international community. This is why when we talk about one of the casualties of war being not only truth, but the essential unity that exists. I want to focus on this just for a moment as a way that we address the plight of women in Afghanistan. Again, thank you to the Olympia Peace Choir for its singing about unity, about one world. The whole idea seems so fantastic, but yet we know that human unity is a physical fact. Look at Einstein's unified field. Look at the human genome theory that says that we're 99.9% all made of the same thing. The problem that we have and the challenge that we have is to get past this thinking that separates us. It's the thinking that separates us. The thinking of us versus them, whoever they are, right? The thinking of young versus old, rich versus poor, the thinking that is what you could call dichotomized thinking. That thinking is the precursor to war. That thinking, that separative thinking, is what enables us to go to war. And yet, we know that human unity is an undeniable fact, that we are interdependent, that we are interconnected, that we are, in fact, all one, no matter how vigorously we try to deny that. And so it's that awareness, it's that comprehension of human unity, which is our path towards involving the world community to meet the challenges that women face in Afghanistan, to meet the challenges that children face in labor in China, to meet the challenges anywhere in the globe where people are in situations where they're being harshly treated or being dehumanized. So we first have to come to this awareness, and it's a shift in consciousness that I'm talking about. But it's something that we have the capacity to do. And it's this song about oneness, this song's about people coming together that really tap a very deep place in all of us of an awareness of oneness. And think about in your own lives where you've had some kind of a separation or alienation from someone, and then you come together again. Think of how powerful that is, even if it's for a day. But think of how the power that has to heal. We have that power. And so, but we cannot any longer pursue it as a nation alone, apart from the rest of the world. And we have some business to attend to here in America before we have credibility to reach out to the world community.
Thank you. I disagree with the decision to back down from single-payer health care. What do you say to that?
Well, I have not backed down from single-payer health care. I did at a moment, I was the last person standing in Congress on the issue of a public option, just a public option. It was my bill with John Conyers that we had 93 co-sponsors for universal, single-payer, not-for-profit health care. My concern was this. And it was a practical political concern. What I saw happening in Washington is this. I saw the forces, first of all, I wish that the president had not put all these eggs in one basket. I took an hour trip with him on Air Force One where he tried to convince me to support his program, and he didn't convince me of anything except that he was totally dedicated to passing this bill without regard to the fact that it was insufficient. It was so-called reform within the context of a for-profit system. I think for-profit health care is a disgrace. But I want to share something with you, though, because this was a very tough decision for me. Because having been the standard bearer with John Conyers for a single-payer system, and I saw that the vote could come down to 1 or 2 votes, I knew that if I went against it, that I could probably sink it. So then I'm thinking about people in my neighborhood who have children who have pre-existing conditions, they can't get insurance. I'm thinking of elderly who are paying exorbitant prices for their medicine, they can't get any breaks. And very reluctantly, I decided that you take a step in the direction of some kind of reform, even if it is within the context of a for-profit system, to at least hold a place for a reform. Now, there is a battle going on right now. People want to repeal even that much. Of people who are unfortunately doing the work of the for-profit insurance companies in order for them to have a continued hold on our economy. I'm going to tell you something. Maybe you already know this, but in terms of gross national product, the health insurance industry takes a much larger share than the defense industry. There's no question about it. In terms of the amount of money that goes every year, the percentage. We have every year. We have $2.3 trillion that's spent for health care in America. And 1 out of every $3 goes for corporate profit, stock options, executive salary, advertising, marketing, and cost of paperwork. If we took all that money, which is about between $700 and $800 billion a year, that does not relate to health care, but if we use that for health care, we would have enough money to cover all Americans who would then have vision care, mental health, dental health, prescription drug, long-term care. We could have it all. So I'm dedicated to that happening. And I will continue the effort to help it happen.
Lovely. What exactly are military bases in foreign countries used for?
The answer is being given by the audience. Well, look, I think it's to have hundreds of bases in Germany. World War II's over, last I checked. Extraordinary number of bases in Japan. It is this old type thinking that says that unless we maintain a position in these countries, we cannot be safe. And it's the detritus of old thinking that is planning for yesterday's wars. What if we started to change this, instead of planning for yesterday's wars, start planning for tomorrow's peace? We should really be bringing all of these personnel home, and all the bases should be closed. There's no plausible reason why America has to have outposts in dozens of different countries. There's just no reason. I would like our government to come home. I'd like them to come home and start building schools here, and start having health care facilities for people, and start making sure we have community centers, and create a Department of Peace. There are so many things we could do, but this is part of the wars of the future. And America has to, we cannot survive as an empire. If you look at the history of Rome, Rome became so enamored of its arms and lost its civic capacity. And we are losing our civic capacity here. So this is really part of the changes that America will have to see in order to really survive, in order to help our democracy survive. And our democracy is in a lot of trouble because of things like that.
Without mainstream media support, how can a candidate that challenges the military-industrial complex win?
Well, you know, there's mainstream media, and then there's the internet. I mean, you see what happened in Egypt. There was a poet years ago who said the revolution will not be televised. Well, that was true in Egypt. However, that didn't mean the revolution wouldn't happen. And what we see now is that social media, social networks, enable people to communicate that jumps over the extraordinary control that so-called mainstream media has. Listen, I mean, you know, I've had a little bit of run-in with that condition. I was polling higher than some candidates in the presidential race, and yet NBC, Reed, GE, Raytheon, they stopped me from getting into debate in Nevada. And then when a circuit court judge overruled them and said there would not be a debate unless yours truly was in, then what happened is GE or NBC et al. Went to the Nevada Supreme Court, who met by video from around the state, who decided about 38 minutes before the debate started that I wouldn't be in it. Now, that's okay. I mean, I can handle anything. I will tell you this story, though, that on the way out of, Elizabeth and I left Las Vegas immediately after I was told I wasn't going to be in the debate. We grabbed the next plane to Cleveland, which was just about an hour later. And on my way out of Las Vegas, in the airport there, just before I boarded, there was this little slot machine. I had a dollar coin. I threw the dollar in the machine, pulled the lever, won $60 and left Las Vegas a winner. So I don't have complaints about everything, okay?
How significant do you think the worker struggle in Wisconsin is? What do you think will happen?
Let's hear it for the workers in Wisconsin. There, you know, when you mentioned that, I could feel a rising of the electricity in the audience. Really, and here's what I think it means. It means that the workers in Wisconsin end up being end up symbolizing the ferment that's happening all over this country, where workers are painfully aware that everything they have worked a lifetime to achieve is at risk. If you lose your job or your wages get knocked down, your home could be in jeopardy. If you lose your job, you lose your health care eventually. If you lose your job, your retirement security is being lost. It's not that far away. So when we see how workers' rights are under attack, this right, the right to organize, is a fundamental right in a democratic society, as is the right to collective bargaining, as is the right to strike, as is the right to decent wages and benefits, as is the right to a secure workplace. And so their struggle is the struggle of all Americans for economic justice. Their struggle is the struggle for people everywhere for economic justice. And so today I had the honor of participating with people from the Labor Council and AFSCME and SEIU and the Teamsters and every other labor organization who came up to the state capitol. in a rally at the state capitol in solidarity with the people in Wisconsin. And we should all be in solidarity. We need a coalition of peace activists, of labor, of students to go out into the streets and demand that we receive real change in our society. And that's what I think, that's what's going to happen as a result of Wisconsin. It's this awareness that we have the ability if we get together. Come on, people, right? That's the awareness. But that's exactly right. You don't complain, you organize. And it is our ability to organize and to feel this common pulsation of the necessity of change that can change anything. I mean, we really have that. So Wisconsin is tremendously important, but of course we see the events in Egypt had an effect worldwide. And it's affecting the entire, not just the Middle East region, it's affecting the world. And it affected many of us. When we saw people go against a regime that was impenetrable for 30 years, and suddenly they're out. This tells you about the transformative power of people when they are united on a high cause or principle, how they can change the world. And so I honor that. And all of us have the potential to do that and participate. Question.
Your thoughts on WikiLeaks?
Well, number one, they ought to get Bradley Manning out of solitary confinement. And number two, I worry about a government that has so many secrets. You know, the FBI right now we don't have any secrets. The FBI has the right to the most intimate details of our lives. But yet our government is opaque when it comes to trying to find out exactly what it's doing. I think, you know, there's a couple different levels here. If someone had custody of certain materials and they leaked them in an unauthorized way, you know, in the military, that person is going to have to account for that. I got that. You know, that's the law. I wish the law would apply to the presidents as well as they apply to privates. But they don't. So, next. What in the world, how in the world does a private get access to information that changes the whole government's approach towards security? I mean, is somebody thinking about that? It's almost, if it wasn't so serious, it'd be hilarious. But I'm against this whole thing about government secrecy, that, oh, you don't have a right to know. Oh, really? They're in Congress, when we come in, they have us sign a piece of paper that say that for all the classified meetings that we go to, we will not divulge any information that is told us in a classified session. Hold on, listen to this, hold on. So check this out. I don't go to classified briefings. Why do you suppose that is? Because you get lied to in them anyway. And you read what was in the briefing the next day in the Washington Post or the New York Times, but you can't talk about it, okay? So, you know, I think Congressman McDermott and I might be two of the people who don't sign. So too many secrets in our government and not enough information. And that's not a way to run a democracy. It's something else.
What caused you to become a vegan, and how has that decision changed your life and your politics?
Well, let's see. It was a visit to the Boyer on 4th Street. No, just kidding. For those of you who don't know, that's a vegan restaurant. In 1995, I met someone who was a vegan, and I decided I'd try it. And what happened as a result of trying it, well, back up a little bit. from the time I was a child, I suffered pretty badly from what's called Crohn's. And how many of you are familiar with Crohn's? Okay, well, if you're not familiar with it, it is a very painful gastrointestinal illness where your intestines get inflamed and you lose your capacity to properly digest your food. You lose a lot of nutrients, and it can develop into all kinds of other diseases in its progression. First discovered I had it when I was about 12, and when I was 21, I had major surgery that I almost died because you know, I had a substantial amount of my intestines and colon removed at age 21. And still, that didn't solve it because I was still having symptoms. In 1995, I met someone who was a vegan, and she suggested that I should try it as a diet. And I did, and suddenly the symptoms that I was having of gastrointestinal pain, which was a constant factor in my life. I mean, I had it all the time. I just thought it was normal. And, but suddenly the symptoms started to change. And I was really surprised, like, whoa, you know, this is different. And I eliminated caffeinated drinks and all the sugar that's in them, and also milk products. And I saw a change, and then just on a whim, I was also introduced to Chinese herbal medicine. And so I used the Chinese herbal medicine, and that, together with a vegan diet, all the symptoms of Crohn's disappeared. It was like, it was a miracle. There's no other way to put it. And so for me, it's meant my life, because I don't know if I'd be here now, even talking about it, if I hadn't changed my diet and hadn't been introduced to an alternative approach to healthcare, which was Chinese herbal medicine. Now, I know what people go through with this, and it is not a lot of fun. But what the vegan diet has meant for me is a tremendous capacity to do the work that I love doing, to be able to have a lot of strength and stamina, and, you know, put in 18 hours a day easily, and not even feel it, and have intestinal health that I never could even dream that I had. But I stay pretty close, and fortunately Elizabeth's very supportive of it. She's a vegan as well, so that's how we live, and it's good. I don't try to tell anybody what to eat, but I'll tell you that this has changed my life. And the good news, Elizabeth is always there with some advice, because she's the Government Affairs Director in Washington for the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. They deal with diet and nutrition, and it's something we talk about all the time. So, and I'll tell you this, it's also, having had this experience, it's also given me even more of an ability to try to look at, you know, different ways of looking at the world. Nothing's more personal than our diets. Nothing determines more about who we are than what we eat. And yet, if you can start to break apart those cherished myths that you have about what you have to eat in order to survive or to enjoy, and start to look at alternative paths, you can do that in anything, you know, which is why the way that I look at the world has dramatically changed from understanding that there's another path towards sustaining oneself. And I feel very grateful for that. And go.
What actions would you suggest the Bring Our Billions Home campaign take to be effective?
You got to be out in the street. There's just no other way to do it. I mean, this is really about a coalition, because you have to, you make the connect. There's greater awareness now than there's ever been. People know that every bomb that's being made is taking money away from schools, taking money away from healthcare, taking money away from job creation. So you build coalitions with labor unions, you build coalitions with students. And this is the time for coalition building, and to start to insist that we have to take another direction. But it also means reawakening the peace movement about Afghanistan and Iraq. You know, we just can't accept that we're the sole font of goodness and mercy when it comes to what happens in other countries. Because every occupation fuels an insurgency. That's an ironclad law. Every occupation fuels an insurgency. I think we have time for two more questions. And then Elizabeth and I are headed to the Washington Democratic Party, where I'm going to make some remarks that will be similar to the ones I made here. And then we're back to Washington on a red eye, and tomorrow afternoon I'll be in Columbus for a rally with labor from the state of Ohio. So.
Wow.
So we got 2 more, Glenn.
There are numerous questions on peace. Are you familiar with Joanna Macy's Despair and Empowerment work, now called The Work That Reconnects? How can we keep hope for change alive? By what means can we transform people's hearts?
Well, I am familiar with Joanna Macy. I know her and I admire her work, and she's very, very formidable in what she suggests about how people can start to break through in various areas. Now, as far as our own self, this is ask the second part of the question again. I want to make sure I'm specific. Would you read it again?
Yes. How can we keep hope for change alive? By what means can we transform people's hearts?
We have to transform ourselves. And let me, it's very easy to be here and advocate peace on earth, but try bringing it into your own life, right? A little bit different. But yet, when we do that, and we really practice it on a daily basis, we then have the potential to transform others. There's just no question about that. But it's the way that we interact every day. It's to think peace, speak peacefully, act peacefully. I mean, there is a unity between thought, word, and deed. And we have to be aware of that. Okay, final question, right? Thank you. You got one more?
There's so many wonderful questions, but I think that's
Okay, ask the last one.
Okay. Please give me a bit of evidence, something from your own experience perhaps, to help me believe that our political system is not completely corrupt except for you.
Check, please. Now, look, from my experience, the people I work with every day in Washington, there's some pretty good people there. And you know, when I first came to Congress, I had this idea after having run for Congress 5 times. I lost the first time, and then I just kept running until they elected me, right? It took 25 years to get there. I ran when I was 25 the first time, and by the time I was 50, I was walking through the doors of the House of Representatives. You know, if at first you don't succeed, try. So, what I was surprised about when I got there was I had this idea of what other members of Congress would be like. But, you know, they're pretty decent people. They really are. You know, everyone has a different way of looking at the world. But most of the people I've met there are good people. What happens is we get an idea about the way the world works and we stick to that, and if we can't move off of it, it can be very difficult and painful. So I think, you know, I don't think the system's hopelessly corrupt, except that we cannot leave the job of governing to those who are elected. We have a responsibility to continue our involvement. And you know, we started off this afternoon talking about truth. And, you know, there's an old saying about truth crushed to the ground shall rise again. I think that there are people in Washington who are always in search of the truth. They're trying to do the right thing. They don't always know what that is. And there's tremendous pressures on people. The pressure to raise money to try to stay in office. It's enormous. Many people, when they get to Congress for the work of the week, they'll head right to their respective party headquarters, get on the phone, and start dialing for dollars. That's a lot of pressure. And then, you know, everybody has their own family life or not, and it's pressure. So I think most people there try to do the right thing. But we are the ones who need to encourage them to do the right thing and to move in a direction that's responsive. You have such a special community here in Olympia, and such a great state in Washington. Elizabeth and I look forward to having a chance to visit with you again. Thank you so much for welcoming us, and for real, peace. Thank you. Thank you.